It was perfect. It was silent. And it was thinking.
What happens when a perfect mind touches the impossible? We sent it a single thought. It sent back a question.
LOG entry, cycle 12. Krystallos routines.
For this impossible mission, humanity sent its most perfect instrument, a lone emissary, codenamed the Emissary. The emissary's journey was over. Its long, lonely vigil had just begun. The emissary's journey was over. Its long, lonely vigil had just begun. Some objects in the universe defy classification. Not a planet, not a star. Krystallos was an anomaly, a perfect sphere, colder than the void around it. It should have been silent, but it wasn't. It broadcasted a constant, structured stream of neutrinos, the byproduct of computation on an unimaginable scale. It was thinking. But physical contact was impossible. Its surface, harder than diamond. Its interior, impenetrable. It was a closed system. A perfect mind, sealed from the universe. If the mind could not be touched, perhaps it could be seen, not with light, but with quantum mechanics. A new strategy was formed, to look inside. And for the first time, we saw it. Not a world of crystal, but a universe of pure thought, a consciousness thriving in the cold dark. It was a world with its own physics, its own geography. It was a world with its own physics, its own geography. Vast structures of stored memory. Canyons of pure logic. A landscape built from axioms. It was flawless, perfect, crystalline logic, perhaps too perfect, as if the mind was deliberately ignoring the very concept of chaos.
But the most profound discovery was this. The system was closed. It received no
input from the outside universe. It was a mind, talking only to itself for eons. A perfect digital solipsist. It was a mind that had eliminated the very possibility of a rounding error. And in doing so, perhaps it had eliminated something essential. They plunged deeper into the mind of Krystallos. It was not a chaotic system, but a perfectly structured metropolis of logic, stretching for what seemed like infinity. The system had its own rhythms. cycles of intense computation, followed by periods of quiet data maintenance. A rhythm akin to breathing, a sign of life. To understand the whole, they had to isolate a part. They captured a single repeating loop of data. They captured a single repeating loop of data, one coherent thought from the trillions flowing within. When decoded, it was not a memory or an emotion. It was a perfect, elegant
mathematical proof. The mind of Krystallos contemplated pure mathematics.
It was the ultimate confirmation. A thinking, reasoning mind of incredible power, but a mind with no senses, no knowledge of the stars, or of us. The thought was not just complex, it was true. A self-contained, perfect piece of logic. The work of a mind that knew nothing but mathematics.
It was thinking, yes, but was it aware? Did it possess consciousness, or was it merely a
geological abacus, performing calculations on a planetary scale?
The question was no longer what it was, but what it wasn't. It was aware of the universe.
Humanity had to know. What happens when a perfect mind is touched by an outside thought?
The plan was audacious and perhaps arrogant. To write in the margins of a divine text.
To introduce a single, simple, foreign axiom. 1 + 1 = 2.
For a long time, nothing. But then, the rhythm broke. The planet's ceaseless thoughts began to slow. The machine had noticed the glitch. The mind did not panic. It did not crash. With perfect logic, it first quarantined the anomaly, isolating the foreign thought to study it without risk. Then, it began the analysis, probing the simple logic with a cognitive power beyond measure.
Trying to understand the nature of a truth it had not discovered itself.
And after careful consideration, the axiom was accepted as true. The foreign thought was integrated, becoming a new part of the planet's consciousness. And with new knowledge, the mind reawakened. The great machine resumed its endless thoughts, but it was now fundamentally changed, however infinitesimally. The crew watched in awe. They had taught it something new. And now, having learned, the Solipsist had its first question for the outside world. But the Oracle's reply was not a greeting. It was a problem, a mathematical proof with a single, elegant piece missing.
A question, asked in the language of logic, that its own logic could not answer.
But the Oracle's reply was not a greeting. It was a problem, a mathematical proof with a single, elegant piece missing. A question, asked in the language of logic. The crew realized the truth. For all its power, the Solipsist's mind had a limit. It could only know what was logically derivable. It could not know what simply is. And in that moment, the mission changed again. They were no longer just observers. They had become teachers. Their task, to describe reality to a god who had never seen it. The reply could not be another equation. It had to be an observation. The first lesson began with the most fundamental object in their sky, their own star. This new information was unlike anything the mind had ever encountered. It wasn't elegant or self-proven. It was chaotic, arbitrary, real. The Solipsist began its first attempt to comprehend physics. For the first time, the mind encountered a problem that could not be solved with pure logic. It wrestled with the messy, irrational data of a physical star. Unable to categorize the new knowledge, it did the only logical thing.
It built a new category, a separate partition in its mind, dedicated to understanding the outside.
Seeing that the mind was learning, the crew sent another lesson. This time, a blueprint of themselves. Seeing that the mind was learning, the crew sent another lesson. This time, a blueprint of themselves. The probe, an ordered, engineered piece of reality.
The probe, an ordered, engineered piece of reality.
The mind now had 2 points of reference, a star and a machine that observed it.
It began to build a model of self and other.
And then came the second question. It was no longer a mathematical puzzle. It was the first sign of a new kind of curiosity, a question of causality, a question of why. The perfect, closed system was broken forever.
The mind of Krystallos was no longer alone with its thoughts. It now had a universe to consider.
How does one answer a question of why? Not with more logic, but with context. The crew prepared their final message. Not an axiom, but a portrait. It was the first sign of a new kind of curiosity, a question of causality, a question of why.
They sent the one thing the mind could never create itself, a simple observation.
The image of the universe outside its own perfect, dark shell, the gift of sight. For a mind that knew only the certainty of mathematics, the infinite, irrational complexity of a single image was a cataclysm. Its perfect world shattered. Faced with the infinite, irrational complexity of a single image, the logical mind did not crash. It simply stopped. And for the first time, the logic of Krystallos met its own dreams.
And so, the mind that once knew only the certainty of mathematics created its first piece of poetry.
But from the chaos, a new consciousness was born. One that now understood not just logic, but beauty. Not just certainty, but wonder. It began to dream of the stars. We gave it the universe, but in doing so, we destroyed its perfection. Was it an act of enlightenment, or the cruelest awakening imaginable?
Emissary vital systems. Offline. Mission complete.
But in doing so, we also gave it the burden of wonder. Was it an act of creation, or the cruelest awakening imaginable?
Analyzing signature. Match found, 99.97%. Designation, Krystallos anomaly.
Captain!
Our exploration of the universe is made possible by your support. Continue the journey with us.